I couldn't make out the words on the paper. The lines blurred and swirled like smoke in front of my eyes. I squinted, tilting my head toward the light. My fingers trembled around the pen. "Just sign here, sweetheart," Mark said gently, tapping the line with his index finger. Helen sat across from me, arms folded, lips pressed in a tight smile. She hadn't said much since entering the room, but her presence felt heavy, like a shadow pressing on my chest. I blinked again, trying to focus. "What's this about again?" "It's just routine," Mark replied quickly, too quickly. "Some insurance updates, that's all." Helen's voice finally cut in, cool and measured. "You've been through a lot, Anna. This is just to make things easier on everyone. Easier on everyone." That phrase struck me like ice down my back. My vision hadn't fully come back since the accident. I could see shapes, outlines, colors, but no clarity. I'd been working on it, with Dr. Felix making progress, but I didn't tell them that. Not yet. Not until I understood what was going on. I leaned back in the chair, forcing a smile. "You don't want me to read it first?" Mark laughed, a nervous, hollow laugh. "You can't really read it right now, babe, and it's all standard stuff. I already went through it with Helen." "With Helen? Of course." I heard the clock ticking in the corner. The house was quiet. Lily was upstairs playing with her dolls. At least I thought she was. My heart ached just thinking of her. She was the only one in this house who made me feel safe anymore. "Come on," Mark urged again. "It'll only take a second." The pen felt cold in my hand. My eyes drifted back to the page. Lines of text, fuzzy and warped, stared back at me like they were keeping secrets. I hesitated. Something deep inside me, a small, firm voice, whispered, "Don't." But Helen shifted impatiently. "Anna, you've been through enough. Just sign it. You can't live in limbo forever." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My breath felt shallow. Then, a small voice screamed, "Mom, no, don't sign it." The room exploded into chaos. Lily's voice cut through the air like lightning. I jumped, nearly dropping the pen. She came flying into the dining room, her tiny face red and panicked, eyes wide with fear. "What?" I gasped, stunned. "Lily, what's wrong?" She ran to my side and grabbed my arm, tugging it away from the paper. "Don't sign it. I heard them, Mom. I heard them talking. It's not just insurance." Mark stood up sharply. "Lily, what are you doing?" Helen's eyes narrowed. "She's just a child. She doesn't understand." But my heart was racing. My body froze. Lily clutched my hand tighter. "Please, Mommy, don't. I was by the stairs. I heard Grandma say they were going to take your house and maybe even take me." The pen slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. I looked up at Mark. His face was pale. I looked at Helen. Her jaw was clenched, but her eyes, they weren't surprised. They were caught. Call to action, only in this chapter. If you felt your heart stop when Lily screamed, "Don't sign it," hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful emotional stories just like this. What do you think Anna should do next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. 6 months ago, I was strong, independent. I drove Lily to school every morning, ran my own small cake business from home, and handled every detail of our household. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. Everything I had, I'd earned. And then, it happened. It was raining that day. One of those heavy, endless downpours that soaked your clothes before you even made it to the car. I remember juggling grocery bags and Lily's wet backpack while trying to unlock the front door. I slipped. The stairs were slick. My foot missed a step, and the next thing I knew, I was tumbling backward. The pain didn't come right away. Just a flash of white, then darkness. I woke up in the hospital with a pounding headache and a thick bandage over my eyes. A nurse explained that the fall caused a concussion and damaged my optic nerves. My sight wasn't completely gone, but it was blurry, fragile, unreliable. They told me it might come back with therapy in time. I remember reaching out blindly, calling for Mark. He was there. At first, he held my hand and told me everything would be okay. He moved my things around the house to make it safer for me, helped me get dressed, even combed my hair some mornings. I was grateful. But after a while, I started noticing things. He talked less, stayed out longer, always seemed tired or irritated. I figured he was just stressed, taking care of me and Lily on top of everything else. But then Helen showed up. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a soft voice, said she wanted to help, said it was too much for Mark to handle alone. I didn't argue. I was still adjusting to needing help just to pour a glass of water, but Helen's help came with rules. Suddenly, Lily wasn't allowed to sit on my lap without supervision. Helen started organizing my medicine and said she'd talk to Dr. Felix for me. I didn't like it, but I was too tired to fight. Every day felt like a battle just to feel like myself. One afternoon, I tried to log into my bank account using the screen reader Dr. Felix had set up for me. The password didn't work. I tried another. Still wrong. I asked Mark, and he said he'd updated things to simplify everything. I didn't even know what that meant. "You don't need to worry about money," he told me. "Just focus on getting better." Getting better. That's what everyone said. But inside, something felt wrong. I hated how they spoke around me like I wasn't there. Or worse, like I was a burden. Helen would whisper with Mark late at night when they thought I was asleep. Once I heard her say, "She doesn't even know what she's signing anymore." That stuck with me. I didn't understand it at the time, but I remembered. And Lily. She never said anything directly, but I could feel her pulling closer to me. She'd sit with me during Helen's long lectures and rub my arm gently. One night, when Helen had left the room, Lily whispered, "I don't like how Grandma talks about you when you're not there." I asked what she meant, but she shook her head. "I just don't like it." Still, I tried to stay positive. I practiced my eye exercises every morning. I kept my appointments. I wrote letters to myself in big, bold ink, even if I couldn't always read them. I believed that if I could just see clearly again, everything would go back to normal. But the more I tried, the more I felt like something was shifting around me, like the walls were being rearranged without my permission. I couldn't explain it, but the house didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt occupied. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that the fall had shaken me more than I realized, that Helen and Mark meant well. I told myself all of that until the day Mark placed that thick envelope in front of me and said, "Just sign this." And I couldn't even see what it was. I used to think blindness was about darkness, about seeing nothing. But partial blindness, it's different. It's living in a world where everything is just out of reach. Faces blur, letters swim, the lines on a paper disappear if I don't tilt it just right. It's a constant guessing game between light and shadow, and the people around you begin to treat you like you're invisible. That's what started happening after Helen moved in. She'd walk into the room and announce things, not ask. "We're changing the curtains. They were too bright." "I threw out your robe. It was old." "Lily's going to bed earlier now. She's been too cranky lately." I was always the last to know in my own home. It wasn't just the changes, it was the way she spoke to me. Slow, measured, like I was an elderly woman with no sense of time or logic. I began to notice how she would interrupt me if I tried to speak during her conversations with Mark. She'd say things like, "Anna, why don't you rest your eyes?" Or, "This isn't something you need to worry about right now." But it was always something I needed to worry about. I tried to stay calm, to be patient. I told myself she was just trying to help, that this would all pass once I got better. But some days I'd be halfway through asking Lily about her day, and Helen would cut in to tell her what homework she should start with. I'd reach for a mug, and she'd snatch it from me. "Hot tea, let me handle it," she'd say, as if I'd forgotten how to use my own hands. Mark, he changed too. He stopped kissing me on the forehead in the mornings. He no longer asked how my appointments went. Most nights, he'd sit with Helen in the living room while I stayed in the bedroom with Lily, just listening. Listening. That's what I relied on now more than ever. I began to hear things I never noticed before. Quiet shifts in tone, pauses that weren't there before, whispered conversations behind closed doors. One night, I was lying in bed pretending to sleep when I heard Helen and Mark outside the door. "She's not gonna fight you on it," Helen said in a low voice. "She trusts you too much." Mark sighed. "I don't know. She's been asking more questions." "Then act faster," Helen snapped, "before she gets suspicious." I held my breath. My fingers curled into the bedsheet. I wanted to jump up and demand answers, but I didn't. I waited. I memorized every word. The next morning, when I brought it up casually over breakfast, asking what they had been discussing the night before, they both froze. "Oh, just bills," Mark said quickly. "Nothing important." Helen gave a tight smile and changed the subject to Lily's math homework. It was becoming a pattern, things disappearing, questions dodged, conversations cut short. One afternoon, I tried to check the mail, and Helen practically lunged to grab it from my hands. "There's nothing for you," she said briskly. "Just junk." I waited until she left for the store and asked Lily if she'd seen any envelopes with my name. She nodded. "Grandma put one in her room last week. It looked kind of serious." That was when the silence stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling dangerous. I began to hide my progress from them. When my vision improved slightly, I didn't tell Mark or Helen. I practiced alone in the mirror, reading large print headlines and tracing words with my fingers. I wanted them to keep underestimating me, because something inside me knew they were doing more than just helping me recover. They were hiding something. Lily noticed too. She started clinging to me more. Sometimes she'd whisper little things like, "Grandma was in your office again," or "Daddy told her something about your bank." She was too young to understand it all, but she could feel it. That shift. That cold current running underneath our lives. I kissed her forehead one night and said, "If you ever hear something that doesn't sound right, you tell me, okay?" She nodded, her eyes wide and serious. "I will, Mommy, I promise." The house was quiet again. But it wasn't the kind of silence that makes you feel safe. It was the kind that makes you listen harder, because you know someone doesn't want you to hear. I didn't tell anyone my sight was slowly coming back, not even Lily. It started with shadows becoming shapes, then colors became clearer, and the outlines of faces sharpened just enough to tell who was in the room. I still couldn't read small print or recognize fine detail, but I could see enough to know something wasn't right. So I kept it to myself. If Helen and Mark believed I was still completely dependent, they'd let their guard down. That's what I needed. Because I was no longer just recovering, I was watching, listening, waiting. One night, I was lying on the couch, pretending to nap while Lily worked on her homework beside me. I heard Helen and Mark whispering behind the kitchen door. Their voices were low, but the kitchen wall was thin, and I'd learned how to focus through muffled sounds. "She's getting restless," Mark said. Helen's voice was sharp. "Then we need to finish this soon, before she starts asking more questions." "Do you think she suspects anything?" There was a long pause. Then Helen said, "She doesn't even know what she's signing. Her world is blurry. She can't see what's happening right in front of her face." I swallowed hard. My fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. They were talking about me, about whatever plan they had put in motion, and I couldn't see it clearly. Not yet. But I could feel it, inching closer every day. The next morning, Mark came into the room holding a folder. "Hey," he said casually. "When you're feeling up to it, I've got a couple of forms I'd like you to look at. Nothing urgent, just some legal stuff, insurance and all." I forced a smile. "Okay, maybe later today." He seemed relieved. That alone told me something was off. Later that week, Helen caught me near the hallway cabinet, the one she kept locked most days. I was feeling around for my pill bottle, and my fingers brushed a manila envelope tucked behind the dish towels. Before I could grab it, she swooped in. "What are you doing?" she asked too quickly. "Just looking for my medicine," I replied calmly. "I already organized it. Come sit down, I'll get it for you." I obeyed, but something in her voice was brittle, nervous. She was hiding something. That night, I tried to talk to Mark while Helen was asleep. I told him I was feeling better, stronger, that maybe I could start managing things again. He smiled too widely. "Of course, babe, but there's no rush. Let's take it slow, okay?" I nodded. Inside, I was screaming. He didn't want me to recover. Not yet. Not until I'd signed whatever it was they were preparing. The next day, Helen brought me tea in the sunroom. She sat across from me, crossing her legs, her posture perfect. Her tone was light, almost too pleasant. "Mark said you've been feeling better." I nodded. "Some days." "Well, I know it's been a hard few months. You've been through so much. It's important to take the pressure off yourself." "Thanks," I said quietly. She sipped her tea. "You know, Mark has been doing everything to keep things afloat. The bills, the house, your medical care. It's a lot for one man." I waited. "So," she continued, setting her cup down, "when he brings those papers again, just sign them, dear. It's all for your benefit." I looked her straight in the face. I couldn't make out every wrinkle or freckle, but I saw enough to recognize the cold smile behind her words. "What are the papers for?" I asked softly. Her smile didn't flinch. "Just the usual protections. Trust me." I didn't trust her, not for a second. But I nodded anyway. Because if I wanted the truth, I had to stay quiet just a little longer. There's something terrifying about being watched when you can't fully see who's watching you. That's how I felt every time Helen passed by me. Like her eyes were always on me, measuring me, checking to see if I was still the blind woman she believed I was. I kept pretending. Even as my vision improved, I acted like I couldn't tell who was handing me a glass of water or whether it was morning or evening without being told. And in return, they let their guard down more and more each day. But Lily didn't. She had this way of walking into a room and knowing when something was wrong. She didn't say much at first. She never did when Helen was around. But she started spending more time near me, sitting beside me during dinner, whispering silly jokes in my ear, holding my hand when Mark left the room. Then, one day, while Helen was in the backyard picking tomatoes, Lily came close and knelt beside my chair. "Mom," she whispered, looking around. "Grandma talks to people on the phone when she thinks I'm in my room." I tensed. "What kind of people?" "I don't know," she said, "but she keeps saying your name and our house." That night, I asked Lily quietly if she could keep her ears open a little more, just in case she heard anything strange. She nodded, proud of the secret job I'd given her. The very next day, she came into my room, her voice low and urgent. "Mom, Grandma said something really bad." "What happened?" I was looking for my math book and I heard her on the phone. She said you wouldn't be a problem for much longer, that they were going to move forward with the removal. My chest tightened. "Removal of what?" I asked. Lily shook her head. She said it really quiet. Then she hung up fast when she saw me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, thinking about the way Helen had kept me from checking the mail, the way Mark avoided answering direct questions, the strange folder he'd tried to give me, and now this talk about removing me. I had to find out what they were hiding. The next morning, while they were both out running errands, something that rarely happened, I made my move. I felt my way to the hallway cabinet Helen always kept locked. But that day, maybe in her rush, she hadn't clicked it shut. My fingers found the small brass key still in the lock. My heart pounded as I turned it. Inside were stacks of folders, most too full to hold flat. I opened one and squinted hard, tilting it toward the light. The words swam, but I recognized a few bold headings. My name, my signature, or a version of it, already printed in places. Something about transfer of title and durable power of attorney. Another page had Lily's name. I couldn't make out the details, but I saw the words guardianship and fitness of parent. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I flipped through the rest quickly. Tax records, my medical files, copies of old checks. Some of it looked like things I'd never seen before. All of it felt wrong. Just then, I heard the front door click. I shoved the documents back, closed the cabinet, and rushed to sit back in my chair, gripping the armrest as if I'd been there all morning. Helen's voice rang out from the hallway. "We're back." I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing. Whatever they were planning, it was real. And it involved my home, my finances, and possibly even my daughter. I looked down at my hands and realized they weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Today was supposed to be my birthday. Instead, it felt like the start of something I'd been dreading. Mark smiled as he burst into the kitchen that morning, carrying a small bouquet of daffodils, my favorite. "Happy birthday, love," he said softly, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Lily crept in behind him, clutching a hand-drawn card. Her smile was bright, but her eyes flicked nervously toward Helen, who sat at the table with a large envelope in front of her. Helen gave me a too cheerful nod. "Happy birthday, dear. We have a little surprise for you." My heart tightened. I knew that tone. We moved into the dining room. The table was set with a simple cake and candles, but the envelope stood between Helen and me like a barrier. It was thick, official-looking, with my name typed on the front. Mark gestured to the papers inside. "I asked Helen to prepare some updates to your will and policy, just routine legal housekeeping." Routine, housekeeping, words that felt like small knives. I forced a smile. "Thank you," I said quietly. My vision trembled, but I caught the way Helen's smile flickered at the edges. Too practiced, too sharp. Lily came forward and placed her card beside the envelope. She looked up at me. "Happy birthday, Mommy," she whispered. Her voice was steady, filled with love and worry. I glanced from Lily to Mark to Helen. My fingers curled around the back of my chair. Mark cleared his throat. "Why don't you open it, sweetheart?" I picked up the envelope. The paper crackled beneath my fingers. I traced the typed letters with trembling fingertips, trying to confirm it was really my name. My heart pounded. Helen reached out. "Here, let me help. You don't need to struggle." I hesitated. Her hand hovered over mine. My instinct screamed at me not to let her touch it. But I nodded and allowed her to guide the envelope open. Inside were several sheets of paper, neatly stacked. Mark handed me the top one and smiled encouragingly. "Just sign at the bottom. It's all straightforward." I held the pen with deliberate slowness. The tip hovered over the blank line. My vision blurred. The signature line shifted and swayed. I swallowed. What exactly am I signing? Mark's smile didn't falter. "Like I said, just updates to the will and insurance. Everything to protect you and Lily." Helen nodded. "It's standard. No surprises." I glanced at Lily. Her small hand crept into mine, squeezing. I felt her heartbeat against my skin. Her eyes were wide. And then Lily stepped forward and screamed, "Mom, don't sign it!" Her voice echoed off the walls. The pen clattered to the table. I jumped, nearly tipping backward in my chair. Every head snapped toward her. Mark reached out, alarm and anger flashing in his eyes. "Lily, what are you doing?" Helen's face drained of color. She rose, hand trembling. "Lily, that's enough." But Lily didn't stop. She pointed at the papers. "I heard you talking. You said you'd move forward and get rid of everything." Silence fell. My breath caught in my throat. The envelope, the documents, the pen, it all felt suddenly heavy, dangerous. Mark's face went pale. He looked at Helen, then back at me. "You don't understand," he stammered. I shook my head slowly, staring at the papers as if seeing them for the first time. My hands were shaking, but I felt a new clarity inside me, like a veil lifting. Lily's voice held steady. I heard Grandma say they were going to take your house and go after me if you didn't sign. Helen opened her mouth, but no words came. She glanced at Mark, panic flickering in her eyes. I rose from my chair, my legs unsteady but determined. My voice was low, quiet, but I was heard. What is this really? Mark swallowed, his jaw clenched. Helen's shoulders sagged. In that moment, everything shifted. I looked down at the envelope in front of me, at the pen that had fallen, at Lily standing beside me. Brave, protective, my daughter. I felt something stirring inside me, the strength to demand the truth. The silence after Lily's outburst was unbearable. Helen fumbled to grab the documents, but I was faster. My hands, still trembling from the shock, closed around the pages. Even if my eyes couldn't read every word, I knew what to do. I turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, go get my purse." Mark's eyes narrowed. "What for?" "I need to make a phone call," I replied coldly, my voice no longer shaking. Helen stepped forward. "Anna, let's not turn this into drama. You're confused. It's your birthday, for heaven's sake." "Oh, I'm finally seeing things very clearly," I said. Lily returned with my purse. I reached in, pulled out my phone, and dialed the number I never thought I'd need again. My late father's lawyer. Mr. Grayson had been retired for years, but I kept his number, just in case. When he picked up, his voice was calm and professional. I told him everything in short, clipped sentences. The inheritance, the documents, my partial blindness, my husband and his mother pushing me to sign something I didn't fully understand. Mr. Grayson asked only one question. "Are they in the room with you now?" "Yes," I said. "Good," he replied. "Keep them there. I'm on my way." Mark laughed, trying to sound casual. "You're seriously calling a lawyer? Over nothing?" "Nothing?" I held the documents up and pointed to the fine print with my trembling finger. "Nothing doesn't come with a clause transferring everything I own, including my parents' land, to you." Helen tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You underestimated me. I may be partially blind, but I'm not stupid, and I'm done letting you treat me like I am." For the next 20 minutes, we sat in silence. Mark paced. Helen muttered under her breath, and Lily sat beside me, holding my hand the entire time. Then came the knock on the door. Mr. Grayson stepped in, a younger paralegal beside him holding a portable scanner and briefcase. They asked to see the documents. Helen tried to object, but the paralegal was already scanning. After a few moments, Mr. Grayson spoke calmly but firmly. "This document is fraudulent. It not only removes Anna's legal rights to her own property, it appoints her husband and mother-in-law as sole guardians of the estate, and declares her mentally unfit to challenge it." He turned to me. "If you had signed this, you'd have lost everything, including custody of Lily." Mark's face went blank. Helen looked like she was about to faint. "I want them gone," I said, my voice steady. Mr. Grayson nodded. "We'll do more than that." 2 police officers arrived shortly after. The paralegal had already emailed everything to the authorities. The officers calmly asked Helen and Mark to step outside. Helen screamed, "She's manipulating you! She's blind!" I stood and faced her. "No, I just finally see you for who you are." They were both taken in for attempted fraud, coercion, and elder abuse, since I had a documented disability. The lawyer assured me we'd press full charges, and I agreed. I wanted it all public. I wanted every neighbor, every friend, every person who ever thought I was just the sweet blind woman with the helpful husband and kind mother-in-law to know the truth. And it didn't stop there. Mr. Grayson helped me update my estate legally, put Lily as my emergency contact, and arranged for a full audit of all transactions Mark had made in my name over the years. He would owe me. I hosted a small dinner 2 weeks later. Just me and Lily and a few close friends who never left my side. We celebrated truly this time. Lily handed me a gift. Inside was a handmade necklace with a little charm, a heart with an eye carved into it. "So you never forget how strong you are," she said. I hugged her tightly, whispering, "I see everything now." And I meant it.